Hi everybody, we are still in Module 2 and we are going to begin to talk about the research process. First, we're going to start talking about hypotheses, and before we can talk about hypotheses, we actually have to talk about research questions. So when we start the research process, we usually start with a question about what we want to study, or a research question. What makes our question a good one? Well, some things that we should ask ourselves. Is the question important? Is the answer going to make a difference to people? If so, to whom might it make a difference? Is it testable? Is it something that we can actually put to the test, or is it not falsifiable and therefore doesn't fall into the scientific method? Is it just an opinion that we have that we can't really test empirically and scientifically? What outcomes do we expect? If our research question is answered affirmatively, then what do we expect that to mean? What is that going to tell us? And then how will it advance science? So what is this going to do for our entire field? Even if it's just a sub-area of a subfield, like close relationships in social psychology, for example, what is that going to do? How is that going to improve our understanding of the way close relationships work? Okay, so after stating our research question, we want to go ahead and be a little bit more formal about it and take a stand with what's called a hypothesis, which is not an educated guess. I mean, I guess that's one way you could define it. Everybody always says that. But a hypothesis is basically a testable prediction. And so hypotheses have several aspects of them that you should be aware of, specifically in psychology at least, that we use these. First of all, it's stated in a declarative way. So rather than asking the global question, how is women's relationship satisfaction related to their physical health? We might make a prediction that's a statement. That might be our research question, larger. And then here we would say, I predict, my hypothesis is that women's relationship satisfaction is positively correlated with their mental health or physical health. The extent to which they're happy in their relationships predicts or is related to how healthy they are physically, specifically with heart disease, because women die of heart disease all the time, and there's lots of evidence that suggests that it might be relationship oriented in unhappily married women in particular. Okay, so a declarative sentence. And notice that I gave a directional hypothesis. This is going to come in later when we talk about testing directional hypotheses in 305. Don't get that confused and don't worry about that right now. What I mean is that we're going to take a stand and say, I think that this is going to be a positive correlation. I think these things are going to go increase or decrease together, rather than just saying, I think there's going to be some sort of relationship between the variables. Ideally, we're going to take a stand and say which way we think the relationship is going to go. If we think that our drug is going to decrease depression, then we should go ahead and say the drug is going to decrease depression rather than there's going to be an effect on depression from the drug. So that's ideal. Sometimes if we're really just starting from nowhere, there's nothing out there, no research, and we're really just exploring, then it's cool to basically just say, I think they're related. I'm predicting they're going to be related, or I'm predicting this is going to have an effect, but I don't know what it's going to be. But otherwise, we like to be more specific with our hypotheses. So declaratively stated as a sentence. Next, we want to make sure that we describe the relationship between the variables. So not only do we say we think there's going to be a positive correlation, but we want to, give an explanation as to why. So maybe even give a little bit more description about the variables. And then ideally, it reflects theory. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. I've noticed that XYZ. I think I'm going to make a prediction about it. That's where a lot of good research ideas come from, for sure. But then you want to kind of check and see if anyone has found that. If you look up in the literature and find that everybody's found the opposite of what you've predicted, then go ahead and change your topic and predict something else. I had a student one time who wanted to show that women drank more alcohol than men. And every study she's found, out of like the 20 or so that she looked up, all showed that men drank more than women. But she just didn't believe it. She wanted to show the opposite. When she went and did her observational research, it was it didn't work. She found that men drank more than women. So, she made a directional hypothesis, but it was in the opposite direction of the literature. So ideally, your hypothesis, whatever you're going to predict, is going to reflect what's already out there in the literature. It's going to be, consistent with it. It's going to build it. It should be brief and to the point. You don't want this long, laborious, complicated hypothesis. I mean, sometimes they have to be that way, but generally, you want to make it just straight and to the point. Finally, again, it has to be testable. It has to be something that if the data show something specific, an outcome, then that does not support your hypothesis, and therefore you have to say, oh, I didn't get what I was expecting. My hypothesis was not supported. You can't set it up so that either way your prediction is correct. Okay, so that's what we have about hypotheses, and we will continue talking about the research process next time, and I will see you then.